Welcome to the latest in our series of TopMedTalks 2. In these podcasts, the TopMedTalk team is in conversation with global thought leaders in perioperative care. TopMedTalk.
All right, well, welcome to Top Med Talk. I'm Desiree, Chappell, managing editor of Top Med Talk, and I have had the opportunity to sit down with a good friend of mine here in New York City. I would like to introduce Dave O'Connor. He is a CRNA at MSK, and here sitting down with us to talk about his experience with enhanced recovery and goal-directed fluid therapy and some of the things that they're doing on the ground to get enhanced recovery started. So, Dave, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How are you?
So good to be here.
I know. It's good to catch up. I always love talking to you and hearing about what's going on here in New York.
Yeah, well, it's New York, so there's always a lot going on.
There's no doubt about that. Well, so give me a little bit about your background, how long you've been at MSK and what your role is up there right now.
Sure. I have been doing this for 21 years.
You've been a CRNA for 21 years?
Yeah, I graduated in 97 from Albany Medical College, and I worked there for a year. That's a tertiary trauma center. Got some great experience there, and then moved to New York and started working at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and was sort of pigeonholed into their hepatobiliary service. So it's an interesting area to work because the anesthesia technique is unique. And we do a lot of fluid restriction for hepatic resection.
Yeah.
And then we were sort of just blindly flooding patients after the specimen came off.
Yeah.
So during the course of time since I've been there, I was staff CRNA, then I became the education coordinator, and now I'm the assistant director for nurse anesthesia services. At the same time, I went back to school twice.
Oh my God.
And I had a very
glutton
close,
for punishment on that one.
I had a colleague who thought it'd be a great idea to go back for my clinical doctorate, which I did, because all the kids will be graduating with them. That's what she said. And then while I was there, both of us, she's down in Texas now, but both of us caught the passion for research. And so went back for our PhDs. I finished mine last year, and she just walked last week.
Wow. So, congrats. And what's her name?
Denise Dishman.
Denise. All right. Yeah. We're giving a shout out to you, Denise. Congratulations.
She's the reason. She's the reason.
She's the reason you're here.
So what was convenient about it is that, I used for my dissertation topic, fluid management, the evolution of fluid management for hepatic resection over the last 20 years. And, we didn't invent it, but we had the surgeon who invented it, at Memorial. He came in 91 and gained some traction using this low central venous pressure technique. And, we all know since then, the evidence shows that central venous monitoring isn't entirely correlated or an accurate measurement for fluid status.
Right.
So we sort of abandoned that, and at the same time, we stopped putting necklines in. So I compared the complications associated with before and after.
Oh, gotcha.
But then we sort of embraced this, the new technology that was coming out in the early 2000s, measuring the dynamic fluid measurements, and all the evidence was starting to point to that being safe and effective for our purposes. And now we aren't just flooding them when the specimen comes off, we're optimizing them.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. And that was all part of your research project.
Yeah,
so.
Totally. Well, I found I always tell people, find your passion.
Yes.
And I found mine, and I can talk about it for hours.
I totally get it.
We don't have
hours, no. But, that is really cool to be able to follow something like that and follow your passion and make it work for you. Make it work for you. And especially in your current job is in anesthesia and doing it every day. That's great. So you said that you lead a department. How many CRNAs and anesthesia providers, anesthesiologists are you working with?
Right. So we have 100, right now we're at 116 CRNAs. We have 5 sites in the Northeast. We have a site in Monmouth, New Jersey. We have Comac. We have Harrison. We have Josie Robertson is a 23-hour stay where they're very interested in optimizing fluids there because the patients can't stay past 1 midnight. And then we have the main hospital, the flagship, is on 68th between 1st and York. And we're opening a new facility. The Koch Center is going to be on 74th between York and the river. So there's a lot going on in the Upper East Side of Manhattan with this group.
So tell me about, because I'm sure, we don't have a ton of time, because you and I could literally sit and talk for hours.
Yes,
So I love the fact that you are in a leadership role, and you have been doing this clinical research on things that are kind of in practice and in play right now. And I know that you're very passionate about it, but how have you translated that passion, and not necessarily translated, but gotten buy-in from your colleagues to start, being more cognizant about fluids and making sure that is a top priority in the way we treat patients? Because I know for me personally, it's been a journey, and now it's at the forefront of my mind, where 5 years ago it wasn't necessarily. So how has the transition been, and what are some of the things that you've done to get your group on board?
Well, it's education. Everybody, particularly nurses, are quite focused on evidence-based practice and those words.
Yeah.
So if you can show them the evidence, then you'll have your buy-in. So initially, we had a lot of trouble getting my colleagues to embrace this. Fluids. Initially, we had a lot of difficulty getting buy-in from my colleagues and everybody.
Yeah.
And we're still having issues with the folks beyond the OR, but we can get into that after.
Yeah.
It's education and showing the evidence to these folks to get the buy-in. And so it was, we had a couple of champions, I guess you would call them.
Yeah.
And what really worked for us was, and we had the luxury of writing it into a protocol. The way you get people to have to do something is to put it in a protocol where they have to do something. So we were using these devices to keep a closer eye on and treat the fluid status of patients based on not just the what's historically used, blood pressure, urine output. But we were looking at, stroke volume variation, pulse pressure variation, all those other things to optimize our cases. And I can, I don't just do liver. So
that's what I was going to say. So has it extended beyond hepatobiliary and liver stuff?
We have enhanced recovery pathways that we use for all of the specialties. And it was, it's not just, you can have buy-in from your anesthesia team, but your surgeon probably should also be on board with this, because it's, I'm sure you've pointed it out a number of times in this very forum where, there's things happening before they come to the OR, there's things happening in the OR, and then there's things happening afterwards. So we have finally gotten to a point, and this is years. I mean, our first study was a hemodilution study that we were using one of these devices on, where we were really keeping a close eye on the volumes of these patients, because we're trying to make them normal volemic while hemodiluting them. And we wrote it into the protocol. We got everybody to buy in on it, and then it's always the resistance to change. And then there's that theory where you have your early adopters and so we were just a great example of that, and we made it work for us in the OR and got buy-in from everybody. And we also have leadership, not just from the nurse anesthesia side, but from the MD anesthesia side, that have really embraced this, and the evidence is out there. And why not? Where we're having trouble now is in the PACU. So you can do all the good and then bring them to the PACU, and people are using their powers for evil. So
that's the way I feel too. I'm like, I just got this patient looking perfect.
And we have nurses that, it's not their fault, it's the culture.
Yeah, it is.
So, and it takes, one of my professors said it takes a generation to change a culture. So
culture's king.
And we're working hard to get buy-in from our PACU colleagues to embrace this as much as we have, because it's what's in the best interest of the patient.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear it so much, not just with fluid management, with opioids too. And that, a lot of people are struggling right now because they are working on, opioid sparing techniques and multimodal pain management.
Right.
And intraoperatively, man, they nail it. But as soon as they get to the PACU, then, the PACU team will wake the patient up, and ask them how much pain that they're in, and
then they have to wake them up to ask them
exactly. They have to wake them up. So, and it's not the fault of anyone. It's just, that's been culture. You just hit the nail on the head.
We've fortunately or unfortunately in the United States, we have this nationwide epidemic of opioid abuse, and as a result, in recent months or the last year or so, we've had a tremendous amount of restriction placed on the opioids that we've been using. So, and we've that has really forced our hand to embrace, these enhanced recovery pathways that have adjuncts. Everybody's getting Tylenol, everybody's getting Toradol within reason. And, we're all using ketamine or Presidex. And sometimes I went through a phase where I was using both. But
all of it. All of the above. Check everyone.
Stuff is so cool. Let's just use it all. And I'm having trouble waking them up. But we got
there's definitely a finesse and an art to using all this other stuff. I mean, I think when everybody starts out, when I started using Dilaudid and Sufenta and everything else, 11 years ago, there was a huge learning curve. So I think it's just going to take time. But I would imagine it's the same way with fluids. There's just a learning curve to it, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And when we first started using the goal-directed fluid management, we were so excited to not give anybody fluid. We may have been doing some damage. There's that fluid optimization curve, and hitting the sweet spot in the middle is and I'm talking with my hands.
I do it all the time.
Hitting the sweet spot in the middle, as you say, takes some finesse, and I think we've all sort of finally gotten there, at least intraoperatively, and it's like I was, to your point with the opioids, we were lucky that, or not lucky, that there was this shortage that sort of took all, we didn't have morphine, we didn't have Dilaudid, so we had to come up with something else. And it forced us to be comfortable with all these other things. And that transferred into the PACU without a problem, because we were, patients were getting epidurals, patients were getting tap blocks. But we're still having a little bit of a battle with the fluids. In fact, I had a patient today that I, fluid optimized in the operating room, brought him to the recovery room, and I turned my back, and he got 500 of albumin. It was probably not what he needed, and probably won't kill him. But it's just not the direction we're trying to go with all this.
I think that's like the communication thing. And it's like sometimes there's it doesn't just get translated to the person that you're talking to, for them to really understand what you're doing. But fortunately, what's great is that, now with the relief study that's come out and, recent literature, like erring on the side of giving a little bit more than what we would have is okay, which really that makes me more comfortable in this setting.
It'll make everybody more comfortable, but then how much is a little bit more? Right. That's where we have to, make our next definition.
Well, I don't think that's something we need to go tell everybody upstairs on the floors. Like, it's okay to give a little bit more because, we'll go back to the good old days of flooding them.
One of our studies, we were looking at, fluid status and using these measurements to optimize them, and they would make it to the PACU, and then we compared them to patients who weren't optimized, and overall the patients were getting the same amount of fluid. So there's definitely a disconnect somewhere, whether it's in the recovery room or on the floor, and beyond where anesthesia has the long arm of anesthesia.
Exactly. Well, Dave, thank you so much for sitting. I've wanted to do this forever, so I'm so glad we had this opportunity.
So glad you had me.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
I just being here in New York, and I know that everybody can't see this, but we have a beautiful scenery.
Rooftop.
It is a rooftop bar in Manhattan at the Royalton Hotel, the Ivy Room up here, and it's fantastic.
If this is the life of top men.
Are you all in?
I'm in. We're just going to go around doing this. Great views.
The problem is that I don't go beyond this. So that's the thing. But it's a rough life, right? No, we have some wonderful opportunities to meet some wonderful people and some really great places. So again, I hope we can catch up soon. I think it's amazing what you're doing within your own practice and showing leadership just by doing, but also leading your group into the new century of practice, right?
Changing culture.
That's right. Changing culture. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for everything that you do as a leader in the anesthesia community and in the CRNA community. It's really awesome.
Great.
So thanks so much. We will catch you next time we're in New York.
All right. Sounds good.
Cheers. Bye.
TopMed Talk.
Nate Majerison here. Thanks for listening to TopMed Talk. Now, before we let you go, it's important that we remind you to subscribe to Top Med Talk. That way you'll never, ever miss another episode. Also, if we could encourage you to join us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, pretty much every single social media platform, we're there. Join us. And finally, check out TopMedTalk.com. If you go to our website, you can subscribe to email updates. That way we can always tell you where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing, and how you can join us. TopMedTalk.com and click on the section marked email updates. Finally, Top Med Talk is proud to act as the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. We'd love you to find out more about them as well. ebpom.org is their website. That's ebpom.org. And if you go to ebpom.org/meetings, you can find out about some of the wonderful meetings that we attend and cover across the year here on Top Med Talk. That's ebpom.org/meetings.